Well, should we get started?
Yes.
I think we're going to be punctual so that I can make time for the person who's going to speak after me. And for many of you who know me, I like to talk. So I'm going to do my best to get through this. If you would like to follow along, you can scan both of these things. This is a template that we're going to be going through that's yours to keep and take away and hopefully find some use for in the future. And then, of course, ChatGPT, if you don't already have it, can access that. This might be a little bit challenging to do on your phone. You might want a laptop if you are planning on truly following along and using your own problem. If not, just sit back and enjoy, and this is going to be a presentation. My name's Jenny Myers. I live a little bit of a double life. I'm a professor at Boise State, and I also own a creative consultancy called Against, so hence the double lives. What I'm going to be talking to you about today is a lesson that I teach to my students that I have retrofitted into a 50-minute workshop, and you are the guinea pigs, so thank you, and I hope this goes well, and if it not, then give me lots of feedback so I can make it better the next time. I'm going to use probably every bit of this 45 minutes that we have together. I'm going to attempt to leave some time at the end for questions. Okay. You read the title of the presentation, 99 Problems, One Workshop, 50 Minutes, okay? We are going to get to the root cause of problems. Like, this is what the overall topic is. We're focused on understanding what the problem is, getting to the root cause, and then engineering questions for problem solving, okay? That's a high-level overview of what we're going to do. The template, if you've downloaded it, looks like this. It's just a Google Doc that has a follow-along journey with some pre-written prompts that you use as kind of a Mad Lib approach where you input the information that you need and copy the prompt and then paste it into ChatGPT, and that's where some artificial intelligence magic happens. To access it, you'll just make a copy of this doc if you haven't done that already. Okay. In life, we are taught to be great problem solvers at work, in school, on tests, and with our boss. A lot of energy is focused on be a good problem solver, solve this problem, okay? We're just trained our entire lives for that. But what we're not particularly trained on is asking the question, is this even the right problem, right? When your boss comes to you and they give you a problem, you take it for granted that this is in fact the problem that I need to solve. So you get right to work solving that specific problem. And so my hope is that I would like to arm you with a little bit more information, a few more tools that you can put in your tool belt that will help you be a better problem solver. Even when someone of authority or a coworker comes to you and gives you a problem, you'll hit the pause button for just a hot minute and utilize some of these tools to get down to the root cause of that problem. Because the right solution to the wrong problem is still wrong, okay? No matter how beautiful or innovative it is. If you've solved the wrong problem, it doesn't matter. So, this is my hypothesis or my flag that I'm planting in the ground, that being able to identify problems, get to the root cause of the problem, truly is a competitive edge and is a superpower. When people sit down to solve problems, there are a couple of things that tend to go wrong when you're looking at a problem or trying to scope a problem. The first is that we're often focusing on the symptoms, right? Because that's the thing that we feel most. That's the thing that's giving us an issue. That's the thing that is creating that rub or that tension, okay? But it's not the root cause. That's just the symptom often. We often will also just poorly define the problem. Either we're defining it too broadly or we're defining it too narrowly. We're also making assumptions instead of gathering data. The further along in your career you are, the harder time you have with this. You immediately think you know what the answer is, and you jump to it, and you do that thing, okay? It's because you have a lot of experience, right? And we're relying on that experience. But the further along in your career you are, you're more at risk of making an assumption that you know the right solution, and you're going to jump to that solution. Well, speaking of jumping to solutions, that you are in fact just, I hear the problem, I know what I need to do, and I'm gonna set down that path to solve that problem. And then the last issue people have with when it comes to scoping problems is just not including the right stakeholders, okay? If you are the only person who's working or solving that problem or thinking about it, guaranteed there are other people who have an opinion and a perspective and approach that need to be included and need to be collaborated with. Okay, this is what we're gonna do today. We're gonna talk about identify a problem, get to the root cause. We're going to reframe the root cause of that problem, and then we're going to ideate. And we're trying to do that all in 45 minutes. Step one, identifying a problem. So I don't see too many laptops out, but if you came prepared with your own problem that you would like to use, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, you can follow along with the problem that I've picked for us to talk about. In an ideal world, you would investigate the problem with a real human, okay? Those other real stakeholders. But we don't often live in an ideal world. And so we are going to do the very next best thing, which is investigate the problem using artificial intelligence as a collaborator, okay? If you're following along in the workbook, this is the section that we're going to talk about. This is the pre-engineered prompt that you would fill in with the information related to your problem. And this provides some additional context, okay? So you're basically briefing your artificial intelligence collaborator. And it looks something like this. I am and you put your title or your role, working in the blank industry. I'm trying to identify the root cause of a problem in the area of, right? Then you scope or clarify the area. The specific problem I'm exploring is, and you're going to provide your understanding of the problem as it is, okay? Then you are giving it a little bit more information around limitations, right? Because there are always limitations when we're trying to solve problems. So you're going to describe that. Is it budget? Is it staffing? Is it tools? Whatever that limitation or that barrier may be. Then, once you've identified or you've kind of provided a little bit of context for the problem, now it's time to dig in and get to the root cause. So here's an example of starting with an initial problem and ending with the root cause of the problem. And this is not a high stakes problem at all, but it's something we probably, well, I have a problem with being late to work, okay? So it might start something like this. Always late to work, that's the problem. First why question, why are you always late? Because I hit snooze button way too many times. I actually patterned this off of me. Why do you keep hitting snooze? Okay, we're getting closer and closer to digging in and trying to understand what the root cause of this problem is. Because I'm tired and I don't feel like getting up. Why do you not feel like getting up? Why are you tired? Because I stay up way too late watching TV. Okay, this is where it deviates from my path. I don't watch TV, okay? Why do you stay up late watching TV? Usually I'm staying up late working, but because I don't manage my time well in the evenings, okay? Well, why don't you manage your time well in the evenings? Because I feel stressed and I want to relax after work and TV helps me unwind, okay? This distance between those two is the original problem, like what's the issue? But the root cause of the problem is really stress, okay? So if we tried to solve issues around helping this person, all of us, me, get to work on time, we might not be really solving the correct problem, which is maybe the stress that is causing all of those other things, which is therefore impacting the ability to be on time to work, okay? Low stakes problem, but that's what we're addressing. So this is where the artificial intelligence collaborator comes in. You're going to use AI or ChatGPT, whichever one you prefer, whichever AI tool you prefer, to practice this 5 whys method. Okay? So you're going to give it a role. It's going to do a little bit of role playing with you. So you're going to assign it whatever role makes the most sense. You can do this multiple times. That could be helpful. Now again, in an ideal world, you're actually talking to someone who's really involved in this situation because they're going to have the genuine, real answers for you. Once you've filled that out, you are giving it some instructions on how you want it to behave in this simulation, okay? So you're telling it that you want it to ask you a bunch of why questions, don't continue to answer, just pause there, let me ask another why question, okay? And And then, AI is the dumbest smart tool out there right now. It loves to lie to you and sometimes go off script. And so we try to put in some guardrails to protect against that particular thing. So this is what the entire prompt would look like. And this is what let me back up. This is the problem that we're going to work through together and collaborate on. So the problem is missed deadlines and poor communication. How many of you deal with this at work? Every single one of us. Okay. If we were to fill out that prompt with that particular problem, it might look something like this. So I'm a project manager. I work in the tech sector. The issue is internal team communications, and the team is consistently missing project deadlines. Our limitations are often what all limitations are, which is budget and the inability to hire someone, okay? Also, who could relate to that? Anybody. And then we are going to ask AI to role play with us as if they were one of the colleagues who has been missing a lot of deadlines, okay? Plug that into ChatGPT, it'll pop up something like this, and it's ready to rock and roll, okay? Let's actually do this live. I have it pre-built, but I think it might be a little bit more interesting if we do it live. So we'll make it a little bit more. And if this is a massive failure, then we'll go back to what I have prepared. But let's make it maybe a little bit more interactive. So who has a first why question? So you are talking to someone who is always behind on their projects and perpetually turning things in late. What would you ask them?
Why are you turning it in late?
Yeah.
Why are you missing the deadline?
Yeah. Let's ask that. Oh, you know what? I need my actual prompt first. Otherwise, this isn't going to work. Hold on. All right. Okay. Here we go. The first question was, why are you always turning in your work late? Okay. First question. Honestly, it's because I'm not always clear on what the actual priorities are. There are too many things coming at me from different directions, and I'm never sure which one I should tackle first. All right, who has another why question to follow up this one?
Why aren't you sure which one you should tackle first?
Why aren't you sure which one you should tackle first? This is scary. I'm a terrible typer, so thank God for autocorrect. Because I feel like the priorities keep shifting. One day it's, this is urgent, the next day it's something else. And sometimes I don't even hear about the change directly. I just see it happening in meetings or messages I'm not a part of. I feel like this has been listening to our office. What else? What else should we ask? Yeah?
Why don't you hear about changes directly?
Why don't you hear about changes directly? Okay. Oh, God.
Okay, no space next.
Because I'm not always looped into the decision-making conversations, and when updates are shared, they're scattered across Slack, email, and random meetings. I miss stuff unless I'm actively chasing it down. Sounds relatable. What else? What's another problem? Or another why question?
Why are you excluded from decision-making conversations?
Why are you excluded from decision-making conversations? Okay, we're just going with it. I think it's because the leads or senior folks tend to talk things through with each other and assume the rest of us will just get the gist later. It doesn't feel intentional, more like they're just moving fast and don't realize how it leaves people out. Okay? Do we feel like we're getting closer to a root problem? Does this feel like a root problem, or should we keep going?
Why did the senior folks stop?
We can, yeah. One more. Should we try why do the senior folks suck?
I think that it definitely has something to do with the communication plan.
Or like, why do they need to move so fast? That's what I would ask.
Why are the senior folks moving so fast?
Yeah.
Or why are they so busy, right?
Yeah, why are they too busy to let you know what's happening?
Okay. So we'll see how this works. We're asking them a question that they might not necessarily have the answer to. They're hypothesizing. They're actually, yeah, let's find some, let's do a different one. They're going to be making a guess on that. So we're talking to the person who is regularly turning things in late. And maybe there's not another why question off of this, but let's give it a shot.
Why don't you give it just later? Why don't you just give it just later?
Yeah.
Why do you think this communication gap exists? Something like that.
All right, let's try that one. Thanks, Jen. How do you feel about that one? Does that feel like it's closer to a root cause?
Then are you taking on like a more organizational issue? Is that the root? We're basically attributing her issue to the broader organizational issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is exactly what often happens is the problem that somebody comes to you with, if you address that, you've addressed the wrong problem. The problem is more systemic. It is more broad to an organization. In this particular instance, and I would say in many cases. So yeah, absolutely. All right, should we try this one as the root cause? We'll just continue this as a simulation and we'll see how this works out. Okay, let's get back into this. I have a couple tips for you. So don't rush to solutions. So this is why focusing on asking why questions until you really understand the underlying problem is really important, okay? So the why is the critical piece there. Okay, this was the additional simulation. If you continue to use this as a simulation and you ever get stuck, you can use, here's another prompt that I've provided for you. Just ask GPT to give you a little bit of nudge or a little bit of help or a little bit of coaching, okay? And it'll be great at doing that. And then, like we just had a conversation about, did we actually get to the root cause? You can ask GPT, your collaborator, to give you an answer as well. So in this particular instance, this might be a little funky. So missed deadlines and poor communication, and then we arrived at a different root cause, which is, whoops, right here. Okay, so we're gonna hold on to that. Let's see, what do we have next? Okay, so the next, you're gonna plug that root cause of the problem, you're gonna plug that into this particular prompt. And anything that's in yellow, that's where it's saying it needs some information. So the next task that we're going to do is we're going to turn our original question, or excuse me, our original problem, the context and the root cause, we're gonna turn that into a question, okay? So why would we do that? Why wouldn't we just tackle the problem? Like, why are we taking the time to reframe our problem into a question? Any guesses? This seems like a very minor thing, but actually this is really critical. You're just like my classes. Yeah.
Is it so we can phrase it in a way that we're trying to get an answer for it?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Questions help flip your brain from problem mode into possibility mode. Okay. And there's a very specific type of question that we want to reframe this as, and those are how might we questions. So a how might we question, it does exactly that. You know, how might we? How is all about possibility. Might, or how is about the approach. Might is all about possibility, and we suggests that this is a collaborative approach. Okay. So this is the prompt, and we'll just go through and do it in our little prompt here. Okay, so our original problem was assignments are late or perpetually late. What was the root cause of the problem? Oh, I have that copied and pasted. Okay. What would be the desired outcome or goal? What do we want to do?
Fewer deadlines are missed.
Say that again?
Fewer deadlines are missed.
Okay, be deadlines, be, what did you say? Be deadline?
Fewer deadlines.
Fewer deadlines, okay.
Like fewer deadlines are missed, right? Yeah.
Okay, great. What's our limitation? Budget always, and hiring freeze. I think that's something we can probably all relate to. And this is who is most affected by the problem. We kind of skipped the part where we established what kind of business we were. We'll just go with the tech industry, and we're a project manager. So who is most affected by this? If you're a project manager in a tech sector. Stakeholders? Give me a specific stakeholder. Client? Yeah, okay. Great. All right. So in this particular prompt, we are giving it some instructions or giving it some information about what a how might we question is. We're providing some examples, and then we're reestablishing context. All right, copy and paste that. And it's going to give us some how might we questions. Let's read through these. How might we create a shared understanding of priorities without adding extra meetings or tools? How might we build in lightweight moments for alignment within our existing workflow? How might we ensure that everyone impacted by changes hears about them in a timely and consistent way? Are any of those particularly inspiring? So it's taking different aspects of the problem and it's reframing it as a question. Any of those seem particularly exciting to try and tackle?
Like that lightweight moments phrasing.
Lightweight moments? Okay, I saw number 2 and I heard that one. We're gonna go with that one. Okay. Here we go. Let's keep going. This is just walking through that particular prompt, and we have some examples of how might we questions. Okay, one thing to note is that a good how might we question doesn't include an answer or imply an answer, okay? So this was an example from the previous simulation that I did. Is this similar to the one I came up with? Okay. Well, let's see. Let's see if it works. Okay, now that you have a how might we question? We're going to go through and do some brainstorming, and we're going to use a tool called Scamper. Has anybody used this tool, brainstorming tool? One person, couple people? Okay, great. Scamper is a creative thinking tool that helps us generate lots of different ideas rather than just sitting and staring at a blank sheet of paper and trying to bang your head up against the desk. Getting started is the hardest part. If you are sitting down to write a paper, if you are looking at a blank sheet in your sketchbook, you're looking at a blank computer screen that doesn't have any code on it, getting started is always the hardest part. And then if you simply set out to just brainstorm from there, you're eventually going to exhaust the lowest hanging fruit in some of those ideas. And so tools like Scamper are really helpful to help us kick our brain into a different place and help us look at a problem through a different perspective, okay? The best thing to do is to invite other collaborators who bring naturally an alternative perspective in that brainstorming and problem-solving process. But when you don't have collaborators readily available, this is where ChatGPT or an artificial intelligence can pop in and be that collaborator for you. Okay. So Scamper is an acronym, and it stands for substitute. So it's going to ask you, what might you substitute to alleviate or address this problem? Combine. What types of things might you be able to combine? So you're just using combine as the prompt. Adapt, modify, put to another use, eliminate, or rearrange. Okay? We already talked about that. Nudge, gives you a nudge, pushes your brain into a different place. Okay, so that just walks us through the prompt that we've already looked at. And let's pop in here. So there's our how might we question. And I'm gonna steal this from up here. Okay. All right. Let's see what we got. I would encourage you, if you're going through this process, to try Scamper on your own so that you can generate your own creative ideas, and then bring in an artificial intelligence collaborator and see what additional ideas they can come up with. And so here's some of the solutions that ChatGPT is giving us. Substitute long weekly status meetings with a 5-minute priority pulse check-ins via Slack poll or emoji vote each morning. Substitute complex project management tools with a simplified shared today's top 3 priorities document or Slack thread updated daily. So that's substitute. Combine. Combine daily stand-ups with a quick visual board review. Combine project updates with calendar invites, auto, send, and brief week ahead alignments. These are actually, I think, could be really beneficial solutions, depending upon, again, the nuances of your organization and what communication tools, and maybe you already do some of these things, but I think there's some really interesting ideas in here. Now, of course, if you're going through this process and it's not generating anything that you are particularly interested in, then you can ask it for more. Or most often what happens is, as you're reading some of these ideas, it might prompt a better idea from you, because it's opening up your brain in a new and interesting way. Here, we'll scroll through all of them, and then I'm curious if there's anything in here that stands out to anyone in particular. Put to another use. Eliminate. I'm getting some ideas. Reverse rearrange. Anything stand out? Yeah?
Question, both at this stage of like ideation and the previous stage of diagnosis, what's your trick to make sure that both the diagnosis and the ideas are very specific to your case and not truly generic?
Yeah.
Because unless you have, like, when you do this with people that work with you, they have all the context and all the information that would actually give you the diagnosis and solutions that apply to your case. Instead, if you go with ChatGPT without enough context, you will end up saying pretty much the same things. You find alignment, reduce meetings that apply to every organization in every circumstance.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a simulation that is meant to help you practice, and it's the next best thing if you don't have somebody readily available. So if you've been given a challenge by your boss or your supervisor and you've been asked to solve this problem, this is really meant to help you to understand to pause, to get to the root cause of that problem. In an ideal world, you're actually talking with one of the stakeholders or multiple stakeholders and interviewing them so that they have all of the appropriate context. But if you don't, then you can instruct the GPT and give it as much information as you can, as you are aware of, and have it give you a simulation of that back and forth. And of course, we know that ChatGPT and artificial intelligence is just scraping everything out there that already exists, and often it's just a recombination of the things that it's finding. So where it becomes helpful in this particular context is because it's going out there and scraping things that exist, guaranteed there are lots of things that other companies or organizations are doing that you're not, that you haven't thought of, that could be interesting and applicable to the problem that you're trying to solve. But in this particular instance, maybe answering your question a little bit more specifically, we're going through and trying to add as much context as we can. So here's the original problem, here's the root cause according to the simulation that we did, here's our desired outcome, and whatever the constraints might be, and who's largely affected by this. So if you're using this and adapting this for yourself, there may be additional information that you'll want to include that might be helpful.
And you could include that additional information at any point. You could see
Yes.
the whole scamper output and be like, ooh, actually, I might not have told you these 5 things that are context you need to know. Give that to it and have it regenerate, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This is like a conversation that you're having with not another person, but it's a conversation that you're having with a collaborator. So you're trying to set up the context as best as possible. What other questions? Yeah.
Well, I guess it's more like a comment, I suppose. But this is more just like to get your brain in the right mode to problem solve, right? Like it's a jumping off point, because then you're going to have that context. Or if you do end up bringing it to another person, like us, someone to kind of share the problem with, then you're kind of already having those gears turning, it seems like. So it's just to get into that.
Yeah, it could be. It absolutely could be. It's also, you could also take bits and pieces of this and use it in different places. So let's say you've had the conversation with different stakeholders. You have a better understanding of what the problem is. Maybe you've gotten to the root cause of the problem, but you want help turning that into a how might we question. So you can use just that section. Or you have some great how might we questions and you just want help using Scamper as a tool. So obviously, this gets better with the more accurate information that you're utilizing and plugging into it. But yeah, this can be training, practice that will help you before you're going into those conversations. Or you can use just different pieces and parts of it where it makes sense. Any other questions? What else? Can I provide clarity on anything?
To that point, one of the amazing advantages of these tools is it helps to overcome some of the intellectual and emotional friction we face when it's like starting up a project or resolving a conflict. And I think a lot of us, even the most type A among us, kind of put off things or we have fuzzy thinking about it, and having a tool like this that you can structure can be really helpful. Just even if it gets it wrong or not quite right, it can help us to structure our responses to them.
Yeah. That has been my experience most often, that I will go through the process. It's preparing my brain in better and interesting ways, and then it's spitting out some ideas that are not quite right, but it prompts another idea that I wouldn't have come up with otherwise. So, yeah. Yeah.
I also wonder, like what you said, Jen, a lot of times when I'm dealing with somebody one-on-one, the conversation tends to go in unexpected places, and maybe you get off task a little bit, and then when you're sitting down to really like create a solution or to implement a plan, there are things that you realize, oh, I wished I would have asked that, or oh, I wished I would have talked about it. This could be a great way to like fill in or even like summarize those missed points. So when you touch back for a second time to have that conversation, you can have a more holistic conversation without missing those important pieces.
Yeah, I think there's lots of different ways that you can use it. And of course, if this is beneficial, use it. If it's not, don't. But if, hopefully there's something that you can pull out of it and make it your own, and use in some other problem area in your world. I think even using this in your life or your workplace, I think more than anything, if you take one thing away from this time that we've had together, it's when you get handed a problem, you're sitting down to solve a problem, don't assume that that is the actual problem that needs to be solved. Pause, try and understand the root cause of the problem, because remember, if we go back to the really simple example of being late to work and there being an underlying cause of being really stressed out. It's a really good example, low stakes example. And to your point that, are we actually addressing the problem if the root cause is, so our initial problem was turning in projects too late, and our root cause was poor communication and busy other individuals. I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was initially, when you look at it, there's a little bit of a cognitive disconnect between those things. And that could very well be the case. All right. Let's see. We went to sleep here. I don't know if we can pop me back up. Okay. Let's scroll through this. Okay. So your last stage is to do a happy dance because you just solved a problem, and hopefully in less than 45 minutes. So I would love and appreciate any feedback you can give me. I see feedback as a gift, and I take your feedback very seriously, and I will use it to improve this workshop if I ever give it again, and if not, the students that have this next semester will benefit greatly. But otherwise, thank you so much for coming and spending a hot minute with me. I appreciate it.